The show kicks off with a depressing look at Haruto's mediocre childhood. His parents split, forcing him to pack his bags and move far away. Before ghosting his hometown, he made a sketchy promise to his friend Mihao. He claimed he'd come back to marry her one day. Haruto secretly thought he was a total stud for being that blunt. He acted like he'd won a trophy, but time moved on and he completely forgot her existence, proving that childhood promises have the shelf life of milk. He figured this just confirmed the stereotype that men are generally pretty unreliable. One morning, while riding the bus to school, Haruto's morning was ruined by a massive accident. The bus lost its mind, hit a truck, and then got absolutely leveled by a train. Suddenly, it was lights out. He woke up in a pitch-black room, having no clue where he was. He stood there wondering what the hell happened. Soon, he realized he'd been dropped into some fantasy world. He'd always low-key wanted a do-over. The hero kept his old memories, like training with his grandpa and his very public death. Those memories were currently giving him a massive migraine. Right then, some thugs barged in and called him Rio, whining that he hadn't shown up to Sao Pedro. They had a bag of loot and were acting way too proud. While Rio was busy hallucinating about street tacos, one guy got offended by his stench and told him he desperately needed a shower and some basic hygiene. Rio bolted and realized, while eating snacks, that he'd actually died at the ripe old age of 20. He tried to tell himself that only his new life as Rio mattered now. He recalled living in a tiny shack with his parents. They were outsiders from some far-off place, but his domestic bliss ended when he found them with a guy who stabbed him, starting a real fun cycle of violence. Right then, some people in hoodies sneaked up behind him. Vanessa, the bossy leader, demanded to know if he'd seen a girl with purple hair. She treated him like trash and showed off her huge ego. However, an albino girl named Celia stepped in, apologized for her rude friend, and acted like a normal person. She was shocked by his black hair, since everyone here usually looks like a box of crayons. She noted that the group was dressed like My Little Pony characters to try and blend in. Rio told them he hadn't seen the girl and mentioned that their neon outfits were basically a giant "Kidnap Me" sign in this neighborhood. Vanessa claimed they were totally going to change soon. Before dipping, Celia did a quick magic scan of the area. She found nothing, but realized Rio was packing an insane amount of mana, which was weird. He just stood there looking confused and out of the loop. Celia offered him a bribe for info before they walked off. Rio ran home to hide from the various local criminals. But as he walked in, he got a surprise knife to the chest. The plan was to let him bleed out, but the blade hit a bag of coins instead. Talk about some top-tier plot armor. A masked guy tried to finish the job, but a spirit named Axia appeared, touched his face, and told him to stop being a loser. Suddenly, Rio felt like he'd just taken a massive shot of adrenaline. The masked man couldn't keep up with Rio's new moves and got wrecked. Rio knocked the villain out cold. Then he heard some muffled crying from a sack. He opened it to find Flora, who was begging for help and looking totally traumatized. Rio decided to take her to the hoodie squad. But her sister Christina greeted her with a slap and called her a liar. Rio thought that was a pretty toxic way to show gratitude. Vanessa pulled her sword and told him he was coming with them. With no choice, Rio just went along with it. Soldiers swarmed in while some random ninja killed the masked guy and vanished. Rio got locked up by Charles, who tried to frame him for the kidnapping. A few days later, Flora woke up and asked for Rio, but he was currently busy being tortured. Since he wouldn't lie, Celia and Vanessa forced his release, and Celia used magic to patch him up. The blonde guy left in a huff, and Rio felt like the whole situation was a circus. He woke up next to Celia, who felt bad about him being treated like a punching bag. She told him he had a mandatory meeting with the king. Rio asked for a crash course in manners because he didn't know how to sit or use a fork. Rio met the royal family and shocked them by not looking like a typical peasant. He was tall, fancy, and actually attractive. The royals could have given him cash or a wife. Instead, they gave him a scholarship to a snobby academy where Celia happened to work. She warned him that rich kids are jerks and offered to be his emotional support. When he joined the class, everyone looked at him like he was something they stepped in. Celia just ignored the tension and started the lecture. Later, Rio went to the lab and found out Celia had completely forgotten their tutoring session. The room was a total disaster area with paint and books scattered everywhere. He learned that Celia was only 12 years old. But apparently she was a child prodigy. Ryo finished his lessons and admitted she was actually pretty smart. His old life memories came back, making him feel pretty miserable. Celia made some tea and checked on his mental state. She told him she was there if he needed to vent. The next morning, he had to take a self-defense class. The coach fought Ryo directly and got schooled by a fighting style he'd never seen. Ryo used moves from his past life to win the duel. His stats were basically off the charts. He ended up getting a perfect score. The teacher said he'd be a great knight, but Ryo politely declined that career path. He mused about how life throws weird opportunities at you when you're not looking. Eventually, final exams rolled around. Ryo cruised through it while the rich kids struggled and acted like babies. They were clearly salty about a commoner being smarter. Walking out, he saw their hateful glares, which reminded him of his mother, Meraru, whom he only saw again when it was way too late. So Ryo vowed to try and bury his old identity forever. The next day, the rankings were posted for everyone to see. Ryo was number 1, tying with Christina, which didn't sit well with Alfonso. The annoying noble accused Ryo of being a dirty cheater. Christina and her squad shut him down, telling him to stop acting like a spoiled brat. Celia showed up to stop the drama. She tried to clear the air, even though the nobles left looking like they wanted to scream. Later, Celia worried that the rich kids would start bullying him for being a loner. Ryo told her to chill, saying that if he cared about their opinions, he'd never sleep. He was way too calm and wise for a kid his age. Celia blurted out that he didn't need anyone else anyway, because he had her as a friend. She turned bright red and died of embarrassment after realizing what she'd just said. What a legendary achievement for him. It felt like their bond was turning into something more than just a teacher-student thing. Ryo thanked her, saying she was the only person he actually trusted in this place. She promised he wouldn't have to deal with life alone. Ryo then made some weird comment about lemons that made no sense. Celia got annoyed, thinking she was still growing into her potential like a long-term stock option. 5 years passed in a flash until the big night tournament arrived. Alfonso and Ryo were both picked to represent the school. The hater whined that the peasant would just embarrass them all. But the coach told him to deal with it. Ryo told Celia the news, and she blushed because he was suddenly way taller. She noticed his growth spurt, even if he still felt like a little helper to her. They grabbed a snack together like they always did. That's when Ryo dropped the bomb that he wasn't becoming a knight. He planned to leave the kingdom and find his parents' old home. Celia was devastated and tried to bribe him to stay with a job offer in her lab. Ryo passed on the offer, figuring she'd eventually be sold off to some trust fund baby. Celia felt insulted, thinking he was just being a sarcastic jerk. Meanwhile, he just stood there thinking that being difficult was basically his brand. The big tournament finally kicked off, and Alfred the ref started calling names. Ryo stepped into the ring first, only to face Charles, the same blonde bully from years ago. Ryo stayed ice-cold and focused, while Charles let his anger issues take the wheel. The guy's temper was his own undoing, and Ryo disarmed him in a victory that was honestly hilarious. Charles took the loss for the cameras, but the salt was real. After downing a few drinks, he started plotting how to make Ryo pay for the humiliation. Ambassador Rice was watching too, realizing Ryo was the same kid who wrecked his kidnapping plans back in the day. He realized the kid was definitely linked to the bad guys. Back in the city, Celia was waiting for Ryo to show up. But he was acting shady, so she decided to go full detective and follow him. She caught some other girl confessing her feelings to him, which really strung. Her eyes were practically burning with pure jealousy. The kid certainly had some game. The next morning, Celia told the class they were moving on to new spells. Alfonso started chirping, saying that even with high mana, Ryo was a magical flop. He claimed Ryo couldn't cast a spell to save his life. Celia told them to give it a go, then proved they all had the finesse of a brick. In her head, she was screaming at them to get it right, reminding them that magic requires actual talent. Stuart hated her perfect demo and immediately turned his focus back to Ryo. He told the kid not to get a big head. He claimed Ryo was just a lucky commoner and that his win was a total fluke. While the rich kid kept whining, another student actually stepped up for Ryo. He said he'd never be that disrespectful to a lady. Ryo stayed zen and walked off, which left Flora looking pretty stressed out. Her sister told her to drop it, since they had some outdoor training starting. The students split into their respective squads. Alpon took charge and said they had to beat Saul to the finish line or look like losers. Saul was basically the girl version of a try-hard. Stuart claimed he had a secret shortcut, and Christina actually fell for it and gave him the lead. The rich kids made Rio carry all their junk, and he wouldn't even let Flora help him. He was too polite for his own good. Predictably, some monsters showed up to ruin the field trip. Alpon actually did his job and killed them, but Rio knew they were being watched by a creep. Rise was hiding in the bushes, enjoying the show. The group hit a cliff, which was apparently the shortcut Stuart promised. It looked like the guy actually knew his way around. Then some orcs showed up and trapped them like rats in a corner. The students started dropping like flies. Stuart got poked with a spear and in a fit of cowardice, shoved Flora off the cliff. Rio didn't hesitate, jumping after her and using magic to save her life before he hit the ground. The rest of the squad barely managed to finish off the remaining orcs. Rio walked away without a scratch, not even sure how he pulled that off. Stuart lied through his teeth about the push, and the group actually blamed Rio for the mess. Rio realized that people will believe anything if it's convenient for them. The whole situation was spiraling into a dumpster fire of bad decisions. Some wanted to ditch him, but Flora wasn't about to be that ungrateful. That just sparked another round of bickering. Suddenly, a Minotaur showed up, making everyone freeze up in pure terror. The girls tried magic and the boys charged in, looking like amateurs. Nothing they did even left a dent on the giant beast. They realized they were absolutely screwed. Alpon called for a retreat before things got even messier. Everyone scrambled like headless chickens, leaving Flora alone with the wounded. The Minotaur closed in for the kill, but Rio appeared, sliced its hand off and told her to run. He told her he'd handle the monster alone, while Christina watched in shock. Rio danced around the beast and ended the fight by taking its head clean off. He figured it was just another Tuesday for him. Rio vanished before the credit roll, while Rise thought testing the kid was the best fun he'd had all day. He was now certain Rio was hiding some terrifying power. Later, Celia went to see the principal, but caught Stuart's dad making some shady demands. He wanted Rio to take the fall for everything. The principal rolled over since Rio wasn't there to defend himself. Celia was losing sleep, wondering what the hell actually went down. Rio finally showed up at the lab, and Celia practically tackled him with a hug. He gave her the real story, and she realized the whole system was rigged. She wanted to fight for him, but Rio knew a commoner has zero chance in a court of nobles. He was just another victim of the Silver Spoon Club. Celia realized he was leaving for Yagumo, and that she was the only one getting a goodbye. She started crying, but he promised to write under a fake name and meet her again someday. In a nearby town, some guy was selling weird food and talking about the local genius inventor. Rio tried some soup that tasted exactly like his previous life. Moving on, he stumbled across a passed-out girl in the middle of the woods. He tried to help, but she woke up and shot a poison dart at him. Rio fixed up an antidote and wrestled the girl until she finally gave up. The girl, Latifa, started sobbing and begging for her life. He knocked her out with a spell and broke her slave collar off. Then he realized she was the same girl from the bus crash. She'd been Stuart's property and clearly had a rough time. When she came to, she was just happy to be alive. She confessed she was hired to put him in the ground. Rio finally put the pieces of the puzzle together. Once he knew she wasn't a threat, he told her she was free. He mentioned a place where her kind could live without chains. She had nowhere else to go, so she asked to tag along. Rio wasn't thrilled, but he let her join him. He took care of her during the trip. He even fed her some actual food for once. Latifa mentioned Tokyo, confirming she was an Isekai victim just like him. The next morning, she asked if she could call him Big Brother. He actually got a bit emotional and said yes. Later, they ran into some demi-humans, and a spirit appeared that was apparently linked to Rio. He got captured and woke up in chains, but they let him go once they realized he wasn't a total creep. Ursula took him to see the council, where they found out he could see the magic world tree. They thanked him for saving Latifa and tried to pay him back. He acted like it was no big deal. They let him stay in the village for a bit so Tifa could hang out with him, promising to help with whatever he needed. Irem was basically his shadow from that point on, mainly because Rio wanted to learn how to use spiritual arts properly. The elders said yes, and then a literal spirit popped out of nowhere. It was a green-haired girl named Draz, who was the tree's personal ghost. She grabbed him and said she could feel another spirit already living inside him like a squatter. He didn't remember signing any lease, but she said that's why his magic was acting so weird lately. She got uncomfortably close to his face and mentioned his mana was actually pretty enticing to her. The vibe got really awkward and romantic out of nowhere. Draz announced that he was housing a humanoid spirit. Everyone in the room lost their minds. Ryo didn't know if he was blessed or just walking around with a ticking time bomb. Back in the day, there were high-level spirits called the 6 grades that everyone forgot about. They vanished after a massive war and became the stuff of local myths. The theory was that Ryo was carrying one of those legendary beings. That would basically make him a god-tier player, like someone owning a working Omnitrix. He got a new house, and Latifa greeted him with a hug before giving him the grand tour. Some other girls were already moved in and acting way too excited to see him. They explained that Ursula ordered them to live with Ryo and Latifa from now on. He met Sarah the fluffy one, Orphea the blonde, and Olma the redhead. He realized his life was turning into a cliché and silently thanked the universe for it. His new daily routine started right then and there. He spent his days learning spirit arts, making booze, and hitting the training grounds. While Latifa hung out with the girls in the fields, Ryo stayed busy grinding for levels. The whole setup looked like a scene from a cliché anime, basically perfect. Meanwhile, Rise showed up with some soldier he tricked into thinking he was joining the Royal Guard. They headed to a cave to pull off a Weaver egg heist. The kid asked if the parents would hunt them down, but Rise told him to just wrap it and carry it like a professional. A pack of Weavers started stalking them from the shadows. A full year passed since Ryo and Latifa moved in. Doral told the kids that at the festival, Ryo would be a certified ally and Latifa would finally be a legal resident. Doral kissed their foreheads to seal the deal while the girls clapped and the village got ready to party. Ryo found himself swarmed by overly hyped girls and figured this was a one-way ticket to Drama Town. Orpheus whined that Ryo was acting way too emotionally distant. She noted that after a year, he was still treating them like total strangers. Sarah started talking about herself in the third person. She suggested they could be besties, or maybe even something spicy if he was down. Latifa got salty while Olma told them to stop thirsting, noting that Ryo only seemed to have a real bond with Latifa. Ryo finally gave in and said he'd try to be more social. The girls took that as a win and went to grab more booze for the festival. Seeing Latifa actually happy, one girl realized the kid could finally live in peace, even if their paths were diverging. She told Ursula she was planning to bounce, and Ursula said she'd better break the news soon. Over in the woods, Rise and the soldier were taking a breather. Limo gave him a tracking pill and claimed he was scouting, but he was actually using the guy as monster bait. Ryo took Latifa away from the crowd, and she babbled in the third person about how much she loved the village. That's when he dropped the bomb that he was leaving, which totally blindsided her. She begged to go with him, but he shot her down, sending her running off in a crying fit. Draz felt some heavy hitters approaching and sent the Mamosters to check the perimeter. Rise kept stealing eggs while the Mamosters found the blonde guy, and shockingly, tried talking instead of throwing hands. Bad move because the kid immediately tried to make a break for it. The Weavers showed up, and the Mamosters realized they had to hold the line before the village got wrecked. Just then, Ryo heard Latifa scream and went full sprint toward the sound. She was about to be Weaver Chow when Olma jumped in to protect her, telling the monster to back off. The redhead summoned 2 monsters to join the scrap, but their attacks did 0 damage, and she got tossed around like a ragdoll. That's when Latifa decided to step up. She figured she had to lure the Weaver away, even if it meant becoming a snack herself. She realized most people find it easier to just stand there and watch. But she wasn't about to hesitate. Before things got fatal, Ryo showed up and saved the day. He went beast mode and deleted the dragon with a massive spell. He dodged the fire and landed a hit that basically told the beast its life was over. The remaining Weavers saw the dragon die and decided it was a good time to retreat. Everyone was jaw-dropped by Ryo's power and thanked him for keeping them alive. The next morning, Latifa apologized for the temper tantrum and the drama. Ryo explained why he had to go to Yagumo, hoping she'd see it was a necessary growing pain for both of them. Latifa finally admitted she was an Isekai soul, which he'd already figured out. She knew he was a traveler too, and they both vowed to get buff before parting ways. Dominique gave him a sword and a cloak made from black silk. Ursula packed him a survival kit, since the road ahead was going to be a nightmare. Finally, Sora gave him a magic artifact that works like a portable storage unit. He promised the elders that if the village ever got into trouble, he'd come back and save their hides again. He said his goodbyes to Latifa and the girls, who were all crying as he walked away in his shiny new gear. Rio finally started his trek forward. He eventually made it to Yagumo, where everyone actually had black hair and looked just like him for once. The locals were suspicious of the new guy, so he tried to stay low-key. He introduced himself calmly and got a fast-track meeting with the village leader. Just then, a short-haired girl named Risaria ran to her grandmother. The matriarch Iuba took Rio to her place and asked him what brought a stranger to their neck of the woods. Rio said he was looking for someone, and Iuba told him to spill the beans. He said he was hunting for his parents, which made Iuba kick everyone else out so they could talk privately. She was stunned but willing to hear him out. Rio explained his dad vanished before he was born, and his mom only had stories of this place. She'd always promised to bring him here, but life had other plans for her. The old lady dropped a bombshell. She knew his parents perfectly. She was actually Zen's mother, making her Rio's grandmother and the boss of the village. She welcomed him with open arms and said there was a spot he needed to visit. She took him to the cemetery, where Rio found his parents' grave waiting for him. They said a prayer, while she explained they left the country for their own complicated reasons. Rio was confused and asked if they just ditched him. Yuba said they thought it was for the best at the time, but they still loved him. She invited him to crash at her place with his cousin Rory, the short-haired girl. Rio headed back to the house. The women were already there with dinner ready for him. He woke up early the next day and found Rory was already up, looking like a total zombie but trying to be helpful. She got embarrassed and bolted to go get ready for the day. Then they all started making miso soup together. Rio flexed his magic by conjuring some water out of thin air. Rory's friends Seo and Shin showed up for breakfast. Rio introduced himself, feeling a bit awkward with all the loud energy in the room. Yuba told Shin to take Rio out for a hunt. Shin figured a pretty boy like Rio would be useless in the woods, but he agreed and promised to make it rough. Rio followed him out while the girls stayed back. Seo blushed and mentioned that the new guy was looking like a whole snack. During the hunt, Rio bagged everything in sight while Shin couldn't catch a cold. Shin walked away looking like he was about to have a tantrum. Rio used his powers to build a magic barrier so he could take a nap. Ruri and Seo were baffled until they saw him walk right through it. Ruri dragged him to the bath and made Seo join in too. Rio apparently smelled like a mix of cologne and fresh soap. The girls were clearly falling for his aesthetic. Shin showed up with his friends, acting like he wasn't jealous of the attention his sister was giving Rio. Seo called him out for being a total jerk about it. Rio started settling into his new village life. Everyone was constantly staring at him because he looked like a model. The town was expecting a tax inspector, and Yuba said she needed Rio for a special job. Then some shouting broke the mood. Shin was fighting some creeps from the next village over. They'd been caught peeping while the women were bathing. The leader was gone, the spoiled son of a neighboring chief. Rio tried to calm things down, but Shin was ready to delete the guy. Yubo stopped the fight and sent Shin back to his cabin for a timeout. Gon tried to trip Rio on his way out, but ended up eating dirt instead. The next day, the tax inspector arrived to check the harvest. They threw him a banquet and everything seemed fine on the surface. But the night before, his men had snuck into the women's rooms to harass them. Right as it was going south, Rio appeared looking like a total nightmare for the bad guys. The guy recognized Rio as the person who killed his mother. Rio finally snapped and dragged the guy outside for a beatdown. He gave him the hiding of a lifetime. The rest of the creeps were rounded up and tossed in jail. Before Rayati officially kicked the bucket, he and his crew were handed over to Ayuba, who started patching up the hero's battle scars. A few days later, the tax money was shipped off to the kingdom along with the criminals, who were headed straight for a dungeon. Finally, Rio decided to send a little "wish you were here" letter to Rayati's father. Then he hit the road for another village, protected by guards who were low-key terrified of how strong he was. Eventually, the whole squad pulled up to the capital of the Karsuk kingdom. Once they arrived, Ryo and a few locals were set up in a cozy little cabin. Yuba told Shin and Ryo they were on prisoner transport duty for the official handoff. After the work was done, everyone piled into a restaurant for some knockoff ramen. It had a different name, which threw Ryo for a loop, but Shin actually thanked him for keeping the ladies safe. It was a rare moment where they weren't trying to out-alpha each other. The next day, Ryo and Seo went out for some retail therapy. He ended up treating her to some Hayman, claiming he'd never actually tried the stuff before. Seo was basically vibrating with excitement because he actually asked her out. A street vendor offered them some jewelry, and Ryo told her to pick whatever she liked. She played the "I don't need anything" card, but eventually caved and picked a hairpin. Ryo told her she looked great, which is the standard response in that situation. But when he saw the price tag, he pulled the classic "I'll come back for it later" move. He whined about the cost but bought it anyway, acting like his bank account was bottomless. The vendor told Seo she'd better lock him down fast, which gave her plenty to think about. As they were walking, they stumbled onto a group of thugs trying to kidnap a girl. Ryo didn't skip a beat, knocking out the attacker and catching the girl like a romantic lead. Her guard apologized for the mess, but Ryo and Seo ghosted before anyone could say thank you. The big boss of the capital found out his daughter almost got snatched and was shocked after reading Iyuba's letter. Later, Ryo was hanging with the villagers when Gok, the local ruler, suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Gok led him to a fancy hall where his wife, Kyoko, was waiting for the big reveal. They confessed they used to be servants for his mom, Ami, who was actually a literal princess. Ryo stood there looking like he'd just been hit with a bag of bricks. The kingdom was at war, and his dad was apparently the best soldier in the land and a total war hero. Gok had challenged him to a duel once, and after beating each other up, they became best friends. It was decided that Ryo's dad would become the official royal guard and protect Ami personally. Since they were together 24/7, things got romantic, and their professional relationship turned into a secret love story. However, a rival kingdom tried to snatch Ami away. Ryo's dad shut that down fast, which forced the enemy prince to sign a peace deal out of sheer embarrassment. After that hero moment, Ryo's dad was officially named the protector of the whole royal family. Part of the deal involved a lot of political drama and marriage offers, which is why his parents decided to skip town. This meant Ryo was actually a prince, and his mom was a princess who just wanted a quiet life. The next day, Ryo was summoned to the palace to meet his long-lost grandparents. They were practically sobbing the moment they saw him. Yuku said he looked just like his mom, while his grandpa Amira wanted the tea on his parents. Ryo had to break the news that they were both dead and gone. He admitted he barely remembered his dad since he only had his mom until he was 5. His only clear memory of her was her kind smile, which is pretty tragic. Then Amira asked exactly how his mom passed away. Ryo told them she was murdered right in front of him by a guy named Lucius. The guy was supposed to be a family friend, but he was a traitor. He'd broken in, drugged Ryo, and tried to kidnap him. When Ryo finally came to, he saw Lucius stabbing his mother before he blacked out again. He eventually woke up alone in the slums, which was a rough start. He told them about saving Flora and the coin pouch. He gave them the full rundown of his miserable life up to that point. The grandparents felt like trash, assuming Ryo and his mom probably hated their guts. Ryo told them he didn't actually have room in his heart to hate them. He explained that all his hatred was reserved for the man who killed his mother. His pure spite was the only thing that kept him going all those years. He promised that if he ever saw Lucius again, he'd end him personally. Amira said he got the pain but warned him about the dark path. He said revenge is basically a poison that rots you from the inside out. Ryo wasn't hearing it and made it clear he wasn't backing down. His grandpa finally gave in but told Ryo he had to prove he was strong enough by fighting Gok. Ryo accepted the duel and headed over to Gok's place. He ran into the daughter he'd saved earlier, making things even more awkward. The fight started and it was immediately intense. Ryo came out swinging, shocking the massive warrior with his insane power. Gok tried to use his ultimate move, but Ryo just dodged and countered with a nuke, winning the fight instantly. After shocking the whole kingdom, Ryo went back to Yagumo to say his goodbyes. Standing at the grave, he promised to destroy anything in his way so his parents could finally rest. It was the start of Ryo's true villain arc or hero arc, depending on who you ask. One rainy night, he told Rory they were cousins and that he was technically royalty. Rory thought he was trolling until Grandma confirmed the whole crazy story was true. She immediately started acting formal, but Rio told her to stop being weird and treat him like a normal person. Then he dropped the news that he was leaving next year, which ruined the mood. He promised to come back, but explained that a man's gotta do what a man's gotta do to find his roots. The next day, everyone was wondering why he was so buddy-buddy with Rory. Since they couldn't spill the royal tea, the girls got super jealous and started some toxic rumors. Time flew by after that. Winter came and went, followed by the spring planting season and more work. Rory talked to Seo, who admitted she was planning to leave after the autumn harvest. The whole village found out Seo was following Rio out of the country, which caused a scene. She started bawling, and her crying was so contagious that everyone else started leaking too. She ran into the woods for a solo cry session, but got caught by her brother Shin. Shin figured Rio was the problem and went to have a polite conversation with him. But Seo stopped him, saying Rio had to live his own life and she couldn't stop him. Shin ignored her and went to find him anyway. He ended up on his knees begging Rio not to leave, which was pretty dramatic. And just like that, an unexpected bromance was officially born. Seo showed up to drag him away, dying of embarrassment from his pathetic display. It was clear those two were eventually going to end up married. Seo spent the next few months grinding her spirit arts training to get better. Harvest time finally hit, and Gok's family showed up for the big village party. During the celebration, Seo pulled Rio aside and nervously confessed her undying love. Rio hit her with the "I'm sorry, I just don't feel that way" speech. She begged to just be his travel buddy instead, promising she wouldn't be a burden. Even though he felt bad, Rio shot her down a second time. She was desperate, holding his hand and begging to go even if he ignored her. He still left her standing there, and Shin found her crying in the dirt. Rio said his final goodbyes to Grandma and Rory before heading out. Just as he was leaving, Seo popped up one more time for a final word. She decided she wasn't giving up on him and promised to be worthy of him one day. Rio went back to the mystical forest, where Latifa and the gang gave him a warm welcome. He caught the elders up on his trip and asked to crash for a few months. He promised Latifa he wouldn't ghost her for quite so long next time. The girls were all over him, promising to get so pretty that he'd be speechless. The spirits then asked about the mysterious new girl hanging around him. Things got weird when they found Rio in the middle of a spooky awakening ritual. He woke up a pink-haired girl who said she was a spirit he saved years ago. She had no memories and no name, so she asked Rio to name her. She started calling him just Rio, which confused the hell out of everyone else. She could talk into his brain using telepathy, and Rio had no idea how to handle it. He took her to see the elders to figure out what was going on. After getting her dressed, he named her E, a mix of spring and his old crush. The elders were dying to know if he could unlock her hidden memories. Rio decided he needed to figure out exactly what kind of supernatural being she really was. He wondered if she was some god-tier spirit who could control all the elements. He knew he had to put her powers to the test to see what he was working with. It was finally time to see if she was a weapon or just a house guest, so he figured a little live-action violence was the best way to test her limits. Rio moved so fast it was basically like trying to track a glitch in a video game. Suddenly, Callan Vergolini tried to double-team the pink-haired girl. She responded by firing off energy blades with the surgical precision of a pro. Rio decided it was safer to stick to basic magic, since he could basically copy-paste any ability he saw with annoying accuracy. The scrap got so intense that the ground actually started vibrating like a bad subwoofer. It almost looked like the whole village was about to be collateral damage. Dree watched the chaos and called dibs on training her to handle her human spirit form. He welcomed her like she was a long-lost relative instead of a magical mystery. For a while, the girl became Rio's shadow, learning the ropes and hanging out with him 24/7. Dominic felt generous and gave Rio a portable house that used space-time tech, so he could carry his bedroom in his pocket. It even had a bathtub, because hygiene is apparently very important in this world. With his new RV settled, Rio decided it was time to head back to the capital. Sarah told him he'd better spend some quality time with Latifa before ghosting again. That night in the bath, Rio realized he'd been so obsessed with grinding levels that he'd basically ignored his sister. And of course, that's exactly when Latifa decided to barge into the bathroom. He immediately turned into a stuttering mess. She offered to scrub his back and guilt-tripped him for being so distant lately, so he gave in just to stop the awkwardness. He begged her to keep a respectful distance, but she just gave him a smirk that said she knew exactly what she was doing. While she helped out, she mentioned that her name back in Japan was actually Suzune. She also dropped the bomb that she knew he used to be a guy named Haruto. She described the bus accident in detail, and Ryo finally realized she was the girl from his past life who died right next to him. It was deeper. Latifa hugged him and made him pinky promise that he wouldn't take forever to come home. The next morning, Ryo and Asha said their goodbyes to the village elders. They gave him a teleport crystal as a parting gift, plus a cloaking device so he could sneak around without being spotted. Latifa gave him one last wave before he vanished into the distance. Over in the kingdom, Celia finally showed up again, accompanied by the ever-annoying Charles. He told her she looked great, even if she looked like she wanted to puke. She fake smiled while clutching the last letter she got from her favorite commoner. Ryo reached the capital and used his magic bling to change his hair color to something less obvious. He saw a massive crowd gathering for some fancy royal wedding parade. He had a bad feeling about who was wearing the veil. That night, he used his spirit powers to ninja his way into the academy and straight to Celia's office. The place was empty, which set off a bunch of red flags in his head. He cornered a teacher and found out Celia was being married off to Charles of all people. Ryo was fuming, realizing the kingdom was basically selling her out for political points. Apparently, the empire wrecked the kingdom, blamed Celia's family, and forced them to arrange this disaster of a wedding. It was a marry the jerk or lose your head situation for her family. Ryo left the academy with Asha to plan a rescue mission. He needed to talk to her, so Asha offered to go full ghost mode and slip past the guards. She was the perfect spy since nobody could see a literal spirit walking around. Celia's dad showed up the day before the wedding looking like he was at a funeral. Charles acted like a total creep, promising her dad that everything would be just fine. But then he threatened the old man, mentioning rumors of a coup just to let him know who's boss. Her dad had to just take the insult and stay quiet. He knew one wrong word would end his family for good. Ryo arrived at the palace, which was currently swarming with guards and security. Aixia spotted a gap in the patrols and guided him inside the royal living quarters. Celia was alone in her room, probably wishing for a sudden meteor strike to end the wedding. She was literally about to burn a letter from her dad when Ryo just strolled in. She looked like she'd just seen a ghost or a miracle. It had been 4 years, but he finally came back for her. Ryo told her she looked even more gorgeous than before, making her face turn beet red. She noticed he'd grown into a total hunk and was clearly stronger than before. He tried to explain how he broke in, but she was too busy trying to act like a hostess. He got straight to the point, asking if she was actually into this marriage or just taking one for the team. Celia tried to play it cool, but then asked if he was there to propose or kidnap her. She claimed she was kidding, but her eyes said she was 100% serious about the kidnap part. Since the wedding was tomorrow, she told him to leave before he got himself killed. She literally shoved him out the door because she couldn't handle the emotions. Once he was gone, she broke down crying, happy he was alive but terrified for him. The next morning, the king was busy giving Charles a high five for the wedding. They both felt a weird, massive power surge nearby. Celia put on her dress, trying to convince herself that she was doing the right thing. Charles ordered her to come out and show off to the masses like a new car. Christina was there too, looking much older and calling Charles a total loser to his face. She told Celia she'd help her escape if she really wanted to bail on the jerk. Celia tried to deny it, but Christina knew a forced smile when she saw one. Charles put Alfred in charge of security, making it clear that no mistakes would be tolerated. During the parade, Celia looked like she was heading to her own execution. Charles was busy gloating about how he was about to own her and the kingdom. Ryo was hiding in the crowd, watching her suffer and waiting for the right moment to strike. He sent her a telepathic "sup" and made sure she spotted him in the mass of people. She started tearing up, and Charles just thought she was happy to be marrying him. She looked back, but Ryo had already pulled a disappearing act. The carriage stopped at the altar, but then a huge explosion rocked the street. Ryo came flying in, knocking guards around like they were made of cardboard. The mages tried to blast him, but he just danced through their spells like a pro. He ended his entrance by punching Charles so hard he forgot his own name. He told Celia via brain radio that everything was going exactly as he planned. He threatened to snap Charles' spine if anyone else decided to be a hero today. He made it clear that Charles was finally going to pay for being a total scumbag. Rio asked Celia one last time if she was actually into this wedding or not. When she hesitated, he told her he wasn't about to let another person he cared about get taken. He promised her a life where they could just disappear and be free from all the royal BS. He swore he'd be her personal bodyguard for the rest of their lives if he had to. Celia finally cracked and admitted she'd rather be anywhere else but this wedding. So Rio decided it was time for the grand finale of his rescue mission. He shouted to the crowd that Charles had actually kidnapped his fiancée, turning the tables in a huge drama. Celia caught the vibe and started playing the damsel in distress role perfectly. She pulled off a fake stumble that would have won her an Oscar in his old world. Charles was losing his mind, screaming for the guards to kill Rio immediately. But Rio just jumped over them, swatting magic away like he was swatting flies. Charles realized he needed his ultimate move just to stand a chance against the kid. He fired off his best shot, but Rio just caught it like it was a beach ball. Rio's power was so massive, it basically silenced the entire city for a few seconds. Alfred felt like a jerk for letting the wedding get this far, but he tried to calm his dad down. He sent his brother to lock down the city while he went after Rio and his new fugitive bride. Rio told Celia to hold on for dear life and hit the afterburners, flying through the sky. He was moving so fast, he looked like a shooting star leaving the city behind. Celia was just clinging to him, wondering how her life got this crazy in 10 minutes. He landed in a clearing and told her they had to split up for a tiny bit. He handed her over to Asia to get her to safety while he stayed back to play target practice. Rio promised they'd be back together before she knew it. Once the guards saw Celia had vanished, they came at him with every ounce of backup they had. Rio just kept dancing, disarming guys and dropping the rest with a single shut-up punch. But honestly, even for him, being a one-man army against a whole city was getting old. Then Alfred decided to crash the party. Rio recognized him as the King's Sword, the local legend who actually knew which end of the blade to hold, and he wasn't letting Rio leave without a fight. Rio could tell this guy was the real deal, especially with that glow-in-the-dark enchanted sword of his. Their scrap was so intense the other soldiers just stopped to watch, while Alfred admitted the kid was legit. The veteran launched a nuke-level attack that looked like it vaporized Rio on the spot. Alfred wasn't buying it though, and told his men to tear the city apart until they found a body. Meanwhile, Asia got Celia to the mountains safely, where Rio eventually caught up, looking only slightly used. Celia tackled him with a hug, and they shared a ride-or-die moment, promising to look out for each other. Suddenly, Asia felt a massive disturbance in the local magic Wi-Fi. Giant neon beams of light shot into the sky, hung out for a bit, and then just ghosted. Apparently, a whole bunch of them got sucked into the portal during their commute. Asia sensed something was very wrong, and sent Rio off to go play superhero again. While she babysat Celia, Rio found some more Isekai victims who had been snatched by mercenaries for a quick profit. He showed up just in time to stop the sale. The kids nearly tripped when they realized Rio was speaking fluent Japanese to them. Rio cleared the room of criminals and started unlocking cages. When he hit the last cage, he saw a face that practically stopped his heart. It was Mihao, his childhood crush, and he swore right then he'd never let anything happen to her again. It was a déjà vu moment that felt like the universe was playing a prank on him. And that's how the first season ended, leaving things messy and dramatic as usual. Rio reunited with Satsuki and realized the whole friend group was basically in this world now. Naturally, they were immediately kidnapped because fantasy worlds are great like that. But Rio tracked them down using a mix of magic and a cell phone, because why not? He wrecked the bandits, saved the kids, and left everyone wondering how this random guy knew their home language. Rio figured out Mihao was part of a new blended family with the other kids. His old life and new life were colliding in a way that was probably going to be expensive. Asia played the welcoming committee, while Rio went to wash the bandit off of himself. Celia had to explain that E was a spirit, not just a weird girl with pink hair. The kids realized they weren't in Tokyo anymore, and that the local wildlife actually bit. Over dinner, they talked about summoning legends and infinity jewels, which sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen. Asia told Rio to go to bed because he was her only battery source. She basically treats him like a human power bank while she handles the chores. Later, Celia convinced Rio to write a letter to his dad to keep her own nerves from fried. Meanwhile, the King of Bertram was busy yelling at Charles for being a failure at weddings. He was terrified because one of the 6 heroes was currently under his roof. The hero, Hirok, was a gamer who probably thought this was just a really long DLC. He took the squad to a safe house where Celia and E were waiting to play house. He was acting like a total diva because the king was footing the bill. Rio, Celia, and the gang went on a shopping spree while the kids stayed home. The girls started getting possessive over Rio, showing that Isekai logic always leads to a harem. Rio handed out magic hair dye so they wouldn't stand out like neon signs. The girls played dress-up while he tried to find out where the other heroes were hiding. They decided to teach the kids the local lingo before going on a search and rescue mission. Next, Rio popped back into the spirit village to check on his furry friends. Latifa and the girls were thrilled, and he asked the elders to host his new stray humans for a bit. He and Latifa made a pact to keep the kids safe no matter what. Lislod leaked the news that the heroine Satsuki was currently in another kingdom. The king wanted a meeting, which confirmed Rio's hunch about where his friends were. Meanwhile, Rise was busy building a zombie army, which is never a good hobby. Back at the ranch, Celia was teaching the kids, while Mihao helped out in the kitchen. Iki was having a total meltdown about being stuck in a world without TikTok. Rio tried to play therapist, but it didn't go well. Then the zombies crashed the barrier because things were getting too peaceful. But Rio stepped in and deleted the undead like he was playing whack-a-mole. The kids felt bad for the trouble, but Rio just told them they were moving house again. Rise kept expanding his roster of ghouls while the squad moved to the spirit village. The locals welcomed them with open arms and probably some snacks. Celia explained that life here isn't like an anime, even though it totally is. They had a welcome party, complete with hot springs because fanservice is mandatory. Masato asked Rio why he was so buff, and Rio told him he had some scores to settle. The kid vowed to protect the girls, which was cute but unrealistic. And Naruto. Celia watched Rio's brutal training and realized he was carrying the weight of the world. She offered to be his wingwoman for whatever revenge tour he had planned. Back in the kingdom, Flora was prepping for a trip, while the hero Hirok was being a creep. Hirok was more interested in the local girls than the actual political mission. Rio and the girls snuck into Celia's hometown to drop a letter for her worried dad. Then a dragon showed up and forced Hirok to actually do something for once. Rio slipped into the city while everyone else was busy looking at the sky. Hirok promised to protect Elizabeth, which was probably a lie, while Lislot showed off a new toy. Captain Raymond recognized some familiar faces among the help and promised to keep it quiet. The carriage got swarmed by monsters, but the girls handled it like pros. They wrecked the enemies while Hirok sat in the back looking like he was about to faint. The hero was busy calming the ladies instead of actually fighting. Everyone was having fun, except the ones frustrated with their lack of progress. Then the Minotaurs showed up to remind everyone that things could always get worse. Rio dropped in out of nowhere and sliced through the monsters like they were butter. Flora had a flashback to the last time he saved her from being a snack. He introduced himself as Rio, and Lislot realized she was looking at a living legend. The maids were already forming a fan club for the hero of the Rika Guild. The group moved on, with Rio playing the overqualified bodyguard for the ladies. He fixed the carriage and explained that his sword was basically a magic antenna. The maids started thirsting after him immediately, which is just his luck. He only let the nobles tag along because he didn't want to be rude to Lislot. Back in the village, the kids were busy fishing while the spirits practiced their magic. Latifa remembered her dark past and how Rio was the only one who treated her like a person. They shared a nice breakfast and baked a pie, forgetting the world was on fire for a bit. It was a rare wholesome moment in a world full of tragedy. Meanwhile, the Emperor was plotting with Lucius, the guy who ruined Rio's childhood. The bad guys wanted to kidnap Flora and kill the kid who keeps messing up their plans. Rio reached the city and met back up with Celia and Asia at the local inn. They planned their next move, trying to stay ahead of the various royal conspiracies. The nobles were busy debating if their current hero was actually a fraud. They knew Hirok was more of a mascot than a warrior, and that was starting to show. While Rio was busy making everyone look bad with his perfect manners and combat skills, Stuart and Alfonso rolled into the restaurant with a pack of elite women and laborers, immediately ruining the vibe. The hero didn't even break a sweat, checking Stuart's ego and leaving Alfonso looking like a total amateur. Lislot and Jugo had to play parents, forcing an agreement where the guys had to escort Elizabeth into the woods as a pathetic form of community service. The next morning was full of fake apologies and a lunch date with Hirok and Flora, where Rio shared his tragic backstory about his dead parents and his nomadic lifestyle. He got a few job offers to be a professional hired sword, which he actually considered since he's got the skills to pay the bills. Hirok dropped the bombshell that the heroine from the next kingdom over was Satsuki, whom Rio immediately recognized, making him realize the upcoming festival was basically a reunion for all the VIPs he needed to meet. Back in the woods, Lucius tried to pull a sneak attack, but Rio shut him down, dismantling soldiers and enemies like Alfonso and Alpha with the kind of strength that makes people quit their jobs. Eventually, Rio had to say his goodbyes to Lislot and the rest of the traveling circus. Flora gave him a goodbye that was a little too personal, while Lislot promised to throw another party soon just to make sure the captain of the Timbeat could make an appearance. Ramana couldn't help but notice that Flora was acting like a love-struck teenager. But Rio just played it off, claiming she'd been weird ever since he showed up at her doorstep. Flora got defensive and cranky, so Ramana had to fake an excuse and poke Hirok to change the subject before things got awkward. Meanwhile, Alfonso woke up just in time to see Rise playing mad scientist and turning the local military into a zombie horde. He was kept awake for the show because Rise had big plans to turn him into a premium-tier monster. Lucius pinned Alfonso down while Rise shoved a magic rock into his chest, making the poor guy scream as his body went through a horrific makeover. Zeno got word that the scouts were missing and figured out that some high-level monsters were camping outside the city, which usually means they need a miracle. At the same time, Flora was in her room wondering if Rio and Haruto were actually the same person. She was tearing up, thinking she might never get to thank the guy who saved her when she was just a kid. She also felt like garbage, knowing that Rio had to become a fugitive because of her own family's drama. Jean told Lislot the squad was officially ghosting them, so she decided it was time to send in a backup team. They decided to wait for sunrise because fighting monsters in the dark is a great way to die, and Lislot shot down the idea of asking Haruto for help because she's still got trust issues. Xiaojun wasn't happy about the wait-and-see approach, but he didn't have much of a choice. Out in the trees, the soldiers were eyeing a handsome stranger and getting ready to pounce, while the guards told Lucius they were moving out at first light. Lucius suggested they give Alfonso a wake-up call, since the guy was now a walking nightmare that needed to be pointed in the right direction. At dawn, Asia shook Rio awake because she could smell the monster army approaching, feeling annoyed that her supernatural radar was lagging. The gate guards saw the mob coming and started ringing the alarm bell like the world was ending, which it kind of was. An explosion rocked the city, sending Celia straight into Rio's arms while he tried to explain that their morning coffee was officially cancelled. Celia wanted to help, but Rio told her he needed to suit up properly before joining the meat grinder. The whole city was a mess of confused people who only knew that things were blowing up around them. Rio got a bird's-eye view from the roof and saw a massive wave of monsters turning the city walls into Swiss cheese. It was a classic pincer attack, forcing everyone to scramble for an exit that didn't exist. Rio told his crew to stay in the hotel while he went to shore up the defense line where the soldiers were getting slaughtered. Asia told him not to die and promised to keep Celia from getting snatched. Chloe was at the wall doing her best to make sure the civilians had a head start on the running part. Right as things were looking fatal, a falcon swooped in and started shredding monsters, buying them a few seconds of breathing room. Chloe was relieved, but the hero reminded her that the party was only just getting started. Inside the manor, Mihao was busy binge-watching Haruto's old memories of his mom and Lucius's epic fail. He pulled out his sword and told her to keep the plaza clear while he went to do some aggressive pest control. Celia stepped up and offered to make sure the citizens didn't get eaten on the way. One of the girls summoned her sword, but Alfonso was already in her face. Rise showed up looking stressed, worried Lucius would ruin the plan, and told them to move the girl fast. He heard Lucius' voice and his blood pressure went through the roof. It was a total team effort at this point. She saw Rio finally ending Lucius while sprinting to save Flora's neck. The little lady woke up looking totally lost, having zero clue what just happened. Back in the woods, Rio was busy staring Lucius down with pure, unadulterated hatred. Flora was just happy he existed, but Rio told the villain to drop the hood and show his face. The bad guy played his only card, threatening to turn the princess into a kebab. Rio pulled a fast one, claiming he didn't even care about her and was just there for an old debt. Lucius finally clued in that the kid had a supernatural roommate living in his head. Rio admitted he'd been hunting him for years just to deliver a permanent retirement plan. Lucius threw a temper tantrum, called him a liar and chucked a knife in a fit of rage. Rio didn't even flinch, which was a pretty big flex. Realizing the kid had skills, Lucius pulled his sword and tried to get serious. He tried using Flora as a human shield, disgusted that Rio actually cared about her safety. At the mansion, monsters were swarming so Celia told her to make a break for it. One swing was all it took to send a whole pack of monsters flying backward. In the palace, Hirok and the Duke were trying to look brave while waiting for the inevitable hammer to drop. He landed a nasty hit, laughed at their hero status, and then turned his attention to Gino. In the main hall, Han was the only one left standing. But a wall of zombies blocked him before he could get his revenge. Alfonso spotted Asia and ordered his minions to grab Lislot. Lucius tried to trap Rio, but he broke loose and fired off a massive magical middle finger. The villain tried to hold his ground, but Rio was coming at him like a freight train. He offered a surrender option, but the bad guy wasn't interested. So Lucius went back to his favorite hobby, threatening the princess again. Rio stayed quiet, playing it cool, while Lucius started connecting the dots on who this kid actually was and where he came from. Rio's "I don't give a damn" attitude was really starting to trigger him. So he proposed a little trade. Flora gives up her name and gets released, provided she doesn't try anything stupid. Since the forest was currently crawling with things that wanted to eat her, the hero told her to back off and then finally dropped his secret identity. He mentioned their little meet and greet in Bertram from a decade ago. Lucius started cackling like a maniac, genuinely shocked the kid hadn't died years ago. Rio flashed back to the tragedy, the first time he saw Celia and meeting his new ghost friend. It was the kind of move that makes you rethink your life choices. They hit the beast with a long-range shot to the chest and then followed it up with a total beatdown. Alfonso and Lucius finally reached the VIP room, ready to kick the door down. He put a hole in the guy's chest, sending him flying into Est, who was busy having a mental breakdown. Alfonso pinned Holland and was about to finish the job for good. He realized he was being played by a very well-orchestrated script. The zombies broke through the barrier, and Celia started to feel the pressure of the numbers. He remembered the Grave and his grandparents, realizing revenge was the only thing keeping his heart beating. Lucius finally saw the resemblance to the kid's old man and got weirdly excited about the potential. Then he insulted Rio's mom, calling her weak for begging for her life, which was a bold choice given the circumstances. The sheer violence of the scene had the princess shaking in her boots. Flora finally put the pieces together and was left completely speechless. The protagonist didn't even let a vein pop. Lucius ditched the cloak and called for the attack. But Rio was faster, slicing the guy's left arm before he could even blink. Lucius tried to hit back, but he was basically playing a game with 900 ping. Rio delivered a brutal facelift via foot and nuked the surrounding area with magic, sending Lucius into a panic. He tried to bolt, but Rio was already blocking the exit. He pinned the villain down, spamming spells without giving him a second to breathe. Lislot got the memo that the city was crawling with monsters and sent her last maid to act as a human shield. Rio waved goodbye and headed back to his favorite group of ladies. A guard tried to play hero, but Lucius just sidestepped him to keep the path clear. The soldiers told Flora to run while they played speed bump for the monsters. That's when the gamer hero finally grew a spine, went berserk and started deleting zombies. Just then, Lislot's team showed up to take over the crowd control. Aya jumped in to play bodyguard, dodging Alfonso's sloppy attacks. Somehow, the bad guy managed to wiggle away for a moment. But when he tried to swing his sword, Rio floored him with one perfect strike. Even looking like ground beef, the villain refused to tap out. Rio just kept the magical beatdown going with zero mercy. He didn't care if Flora was getting trauma from watching the show. She wanted him to stop the massacre. Someone was screaming for it to end. But the hero wasn't in the mood for forgiveness. Lucius tried to grab his severed arm, but Rio swiped it away at the last second. With his vision turning red with hate, he decided it was time to finish the job. He slammed a knee into Lucius's face with enough force to rearrange his features. Then, with a flaming sword, he blocked a desperate attempt on Flora's life, stopping the blade just inches from the princess's throat. Then Rise appeared to bail Lucius out, but Rio told him to back off. A servant mentioned Rio was busy being a legend on the wall, which helped calm everyone's nerves. Cosette was busy claiming the real Rio as her own personal trophy. Alfonso smashed the door open with a zombie squad and started clearing the room of anyone with a pulse. They knew they were dead men walking, but they opened up a gap so the ladies could make a break for the exit. He had to admit he was wrong about the girl having zero potential. Asia told Rio to go be a hero while they handled the garbage collection. Natalie threw another weapon in, allowing Aya to skewer Alfonso right through the heart. He said he wasn't done with the guy yet, but Lucius was already over it. The villain muttered some insults, while a defender tried to keep the girl safe. He wanted the fight to continue, but the army decided it was time for a tactical exit. As a parting gift, Rise summoned a dragon to distract Rio and the princess. Celia stepped up and shielded the villagers with some high-tier magic. Aya was just relieved they weren't all dead, practically shaking from the stress. Flora called out to him. Rio apologized for the mess and gave her a quick hug to calm her down. But he pulled away fast, saying he didn't deserve any thank you cards. Flora tearfully begged him to just forget she existed, which was a real mood.